Okay, I believe that we are live on Facebook for our June Pride Pink Table Talk. I'm very, very excited to be here. We actually aired our 5-year anniversary last month, so we haven't had a show in 2 months, so it feels like it's been a minute. So I am Haley Brown Buxton Punch. I'm super happy to be here and be talking about all about Pride. And I'll let my co-host, Dr. Candace, take it off now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Candace or Candace Thompson. I'm a breast surgeon in the Bay Area and very excited to have our annual Pride episode.
And we have two amazing people with us here today to join us, people that I've come to know for a short amount of time, a long amount of time, and come to truly love. And so why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Righty. I am Jalen Buxton Punch. I am so honored to be here. I am also quite an old friend of Haley's. I also happen to be their sister-in-law. And outside of that, I am a huge advocate for LGBTQIA plus health, mental health, and advocacy. I happen to be part of the community. I am proudly queer, proudly non-binary, and always grateful to be able to discuss ways in which we can keep us safe by us for us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trudy Ann Hay. I am the Executive Director of the Bird Cancer Education and Advocacy Foundation. We are located here in Philadelphia. I don't know what much to say about myself. I am an immigrant. I am a part of the LGBTQ community. I identify as bisexual and poly as well.
Love it, love it. And Uza is joining us as well. Um, so hi Uza, you actually are perfect time for your introduction here if you want to jump right
Hi
in.
everyone. Hi everyone. Happy Pride. I'm Uzo Sameka. I am what am I, Haley?
I really don't know. I honestly, when I was doing this thing, I was like, what do we call you? But you go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, sometimes we say your partner in crime, but I work on programs and community engagement. We want to be out in the community, especially during this month, educating and advocating for our women and teaching each other how to like lift ourselves up, especially in this day and age. So happy to be here.
Totally, totally. So, what have you guys been doing for Pride this month? I know that Uza and I actually went to World Pride here in DC for the weekend, even though we usually do New York Pride. But this weekend is actually, I feel like a big weekend because SF Pride is my favorite Pride. So, Dr. Candace, make sure you hit it. I know.
DC Pride is my favorite Pride. We had this debate last
Yeah,
year.
we did.
I'm always missing DC.
Yeah, no, I'm always missing. Yeah, so we just need to switch spots for a time period. But yeah. So what are you guys doing for Pride? How have you celebrated? How have you, you know, made Pride your thing this month? Or what are your plans to make for sure that Pride lasts longer than a month? Anything.
So this is actually the first year that I haven't really done much for Pride. So I actually didn't attend Philly Pride this year for the first time. One being I was 8 months pregnant at the time, and me, the crowd, the heat, we were not going to get along. So, I pretty much just celebrated in-house with my friends and stuff, seeing as though that I can't partake in anything unless it's a mocktail. I think most of my friends have been avoiding me as well. So just stayed home and celebrated in my own unique way. Definitely bought some Pride merch for my son as well. It's something we talk about, be proud of who you are no matter what. And, just I kept it very intimate this year.
I love that for you. That's super important to do Pride however that works for you because life happens.
Amen. Trudy, I am 100% with you. This was one of the first years where I did not go to a very large Pride celebration for very long. So I just recently had a child. They are 5 months old. And I have been a head marshal for New York City Dyke March for the last 2 years. And so I was really conflicted about like, I don't quite want to pop out for too long with crowds and heat and germs. But also, I was sad at the thought of not going. So for a minute yesterday, I was able to bring them to New York City's Dyke March. We were dragged into the front of the parade, and thousands of dykes were able to shout "Happy Pride" at my beautiful little baby. And then I popped right on out. I was gone within 10 minutes, right on Black Dot Block. And it was just a really wonderful experience to be like, you know what, I don't need to stay for the whole moment. Pride truly is every day. And then this week I was lucky enough to do Afro Share with Uza, and I felt like that was a great Pride moment, to be just surrounded by a lot of Black women, a lot of Black people with whom their health was important, the conversations and their well-being were important. And they were able to be themselves together in community. So I felt like that was a joint Pride celebration in itself.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that pride is so much about like what we're prideful of, right? And what those moments that give us pride, those moments that give empower us. And so that's kind of the lens with which I've definitely have understood it, especially as an elementary school teacher, which I was before this, because this topic was something that I refused to not celebrate in my classroom, and yet had to find the way to make sure that it was inclusive of all walks of life. And so like thinking of how the things that make us feel prideful, is really, really important. Who else? What else are you guys doing for Pride, Dr. Candace and Uza?
I guess I can go next. I'm getting over a cold from being out too much. I was in the crowds, but I was in Paris, and they had like the big La Fête de la Musique, and it was amazing. And there were all like multiple different types of people and groups there just celebrating life and music and pride in some areas. So I'm just recovering from all of that right now.
One, great reason to recover. And two, what a great place to celebrate Pride. That seems like awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
For me, there are a lot of Black queer collectives that really exciting to see. And they travel. So there's like one called Queer Aunties. So it's for like kind of like 28 and up crew, which is perfect. Because sometimes you just want to chill. And so they are in LA, but they come to DC and they go to Atlanta also. So there's a few collectives like that that I've seen. And it's really nice because you feel even more represented. Um, Especially you go to a city like Atlanta. Um, the queer population and the parties can kind of be skewed to like a certain type of queer group. So it's just nice to see more representation lately.
I know last year Uza and I were actually in Atlanta for what was another international Pride moment. And we were like, for a second, we like didn't know what was going on, and there was a lot of drama at this Pride. People in Atlanta were really not happy to have this celebration there, which was like crazy because it was Atlanta. Like we thought we were walking to like a mecca of Pride, and to find out that there were like, some naysayers around was awful. But and at first we were like, gosh, is this actually International Pride? Like, and then we met like gays from everywhere. And it was great. We found the pockets and like had a ball, and it was just like a great celebration. So there is definitely pride outside of this month. You might have to do a little bit of digging, but definitely go look for it. And Jalen, you actually said Gaby before, which I very much got pregnant while visiting all of my Gaysians in the Bay Area. Um, and so I was staying between two different of my friends' houses, and my husband was with me, and so definitely got pregnant at their houses. And so they're like, Haley, it's a Gaby.
I would also like to flag, given that we were discussing my brother, we're going to end the conversation right there. That was great. And we are good. Congrats. Love it. I was giving birth that week. So also glad you made it back to New York after your fun activity and celebration was done.
Yeah.
But bringing it back to our celebration of Pride and different ways in which you can find it, I'm going to plug two things for all those who might be watching, which is like Black Pride in Atlanta, very different than Pride this month. Very important. Highly recommend you go if you've never gone. Community in multiple ways. A great great supportive environment. And Black Pride in DC, which might be some of the best moments I've ever experienced in Howard.
Which is
So
at the end of May.
exactly. So if you are not celebrating at the end of this weekend, that is okay. Make sure to look up the Black Prides near you, because more importantly, we do have our own celebrations and we do have our own opportunities to be included, to have a voice, and to be celebrated. So plugging that and taking the conversation away from Haley's Gaby in San Francisco.
Yes,
Yeah,
we'll
I
we'll
love
get
that plug. And I love when you mentioned also like celebrating Pride throughout the year, not just in June. How would you all say that you celebrate Pride throughout the year? What are some little things you do?
everyday life. Like
I mean, like Haley said, everyday life. I mean, for me, Pride is not just for the month of June. I think for the month of June is when we collectively come together to celebrate Pride. But being a community advocate, being in the field that I am, I work with a lot of people within the LGBTQ plus community every day. So just providing education for them, support, all of those things, and supporting minority businesses that are LGBTQ plus as well. I'm very, very selective when it comes to my queer folks and who I shop from and who I support, and shine the light on them and stuff like that. So for me, those things are important throughout the year, not just during Pride Month. Like don't wait for the big company to slap the rainbow flag on their merchandise and say, we support Pride. Like, no. Find the minority businesses within your neighborhood, that are within the core community, that you can show support to every day. That's how I choose to celebrate Pride throughout the year.
And piggybacking off that, Trinity, I definitely not just in supporting businesses, but the healthcare providers that I go to, right? And the places in which I'm reflective. I choose a lot of my providers based off of their own lived experience, their own ability to offer culturally competent care for who I am. So as someone who is non-binary, as someone who's proudly queer, someone who had a baby, my midwife requirement was very explicit. All right. I needed someone who understood all of my identities and who would advocate for all parts of me. Someone who definitely used the right terms. So for me, my relationship with my breasts have really evolved, and it became very important for them to not just refer to like the anatomical breast, but often like my chesticles, because sometimes on days where I am less femme, the relationship is harder for me to access with my own body. The body dysmorphia and the ways that my body changed while giving birth. The language that I had known, I've only known mother. It never occurred to me that parenting and the language around parenting might need to evolve and shift with more information that I got as well. So to me, it's really about celebrating it in a way where every day I'm able to not just like learn and grow myself, but also have that reflected in my healthcare and my experience navigating it. And in my discussion with my friends and those who I call my loved ones, because at the end of the day, a large part of that is about how much you are able to not just be seen, but be respected, be cared for. So totally with you.
Yeah, definitely. One of my midwife is actually queer, so I love that.
I love that you mentioned that you're bringing it back to the breasts, because as a breast surgeon, I feel like I always have to connect with the patient and see like, what is this patient's relationship to her breasts, whether they're queer, gay, part of the LGBTQIA plus community, like what is their relationship? What is their goal? Yes, they may have cancer, and that could affect the type of surgery that they want. So I think it's really important to like choose and have healthcare providers who understand that and I can identify that whenever they're talking with you. I guess if anyone else can say like what their relationship is with their breasts and what that means to them
yeah, I feel like
and
I,
the
I
community.
feel like, and by the way, I feel like I reject like most labels in life. So like I feel like my pronouns are Haley. I feel like that is what I prefer to be
I
called.
know. I love that Jalen has she, they. I'm always like, this is so like I mean, I'm not he. I know that, but like I'm okay with they. I'm okay with she. I'm okay with Candace. Like
Yeah, and I feel like we have our right to define that. And so I feel like my relationship with my breast has really changed over time for many reasons, right? It first made a drastic change when probably like in college when I was like, your boobs are way too small, you don't need bras. And like just had this moment of like, oh, like this is like I like them now, despite them pointing in opposite directions. Like I like their size, I like that they're small, like that makes sense for me. Um, I would look like my I feel like my body it just works with small breasts. Um, and then I feel like I had a really big change when I got into this work, right, in breast cancer advocacy because um, I have such an intense breast cancer risk in my family. I have a great great aunt, grandmother, and mother who had breast cancer. And so I've now thought a lot about what it's going to be like to cut them off one day, right? And how to, if I'm attached to them now to the point if I don't want to cut them off, right? Like, do I care about them now enough to like, I don't want to lose them? And that answer is I'm going to cut them off. But it took me a second to like get here. You know what I mean? Because I thought for a second that I was actually getting attached, which can be real for somebody for any reason why they need to cut them off, right? Having to deal with that attachment. Um, and now, even during pregnancy, they're finally coming in. So that's a whole different experience of like, oh, am I like dressing more feminine because I have breast? Right? Like, is that a thing? Or is it because like my pants don't fit, right? I can't really tell which one it is. But you know what I mean? Because usually my the way that I dress for in a professional setting is much more masculine. Me and Jill were talking about this the other day with her mom because we were like, how do we like reconcile these bodies with our masculine presenting work clothes, you know? And how do we deal with that? And so yeah, I feel like it's evolving. It's going to keep on changing because now I'm into having bigger boobs. Like when I get them done, I'm like, oh, I'm going a little bit bigger, you know? And so, you know, I think it's going to continue to evolve. And I think that that's what life is, right? You go through so many different phases of life as a woman. Um, we actually spend 40% of our lives in perimenopause, and that's not really talked about enough. And so that's I went to this training and I was like, holy shit, like I've learned so much. This is what this gynecologist told me, Dr. Candace, I see your face. And so
I'm just
um,
trying to do the math as someone with the math background. Like that seems
long time, right? She
yeah.
basically, her point was that we'd spend not enough time talking about that phase, given that we like talk about pregnancy, we talk about menopause and stuff. We were just, I think we just started talking about menopause for real. But you know what I'm saying? But like there are other phases of womanhood that take place that need to be addressed in a more meaningful way. And I think your boob relationship might change throughout that, right? And so it's so important to kind of know where you are with your relationship, even though it's changing, just know where you are, or at least try to think about it, to spend time thinking about it, because you might want that to, at the day that you have to do something differently than you thought, it might be nice to already have a relationship with your breasts, right, in some capacity.
That's very true. And I feel like a lot of people don't go through life thinking about that. Like you and I do, because your family history and I do this for a living. I'm always like, how would I feel if I had to get a mastectomy? Um, and there are like a lot of different things that can happen with mastectomies, such as not having any nipple sensation and things like that. And those are really hard things to think about conceptually for the future. So it's good to know like what your relationship is with your breast, um, so that you know what you want if anything actually does happen.
And over time too, I've also become somebody who like likes them in a sexual way more than I used to, right? They became that's been like I didn't think about them as all as a sexual organ for the longest because again it didn't appeal to me and now it does. And so that's like in the last like decade I've been like, oh, that's nice, you know? And so like again, it changes. So
As
And
someone
that's,
on the
I'm
opposite
sorry.
side of the spectrum, sorry, isn't I just want to call in that I actually have a very different experience than you. So I used to love my breasts, as you know, like they were like my shining glory. And recently, not so much, which has been a barrier to healthcare because making sure I do self breast exams, making sure that I'm comfortable, checking for lumps as I am breastfeeding, and of course my breasts are changing all of the time. I find myself struggling a little bit to not only have that relationship with my breasts, but to speak about them in the same way that I used to. And so I think one of the things that have really drawn me into like this line of work recently is being like sometimes the barrier to healthcare could actually be that we don't like our bodies and our breasts, right? So we aren't doing those exams, we're not having the conversations, we're binding, and especially in the queer community, kind of like stifling that tissue more and more. And it's important to remember that trans men have an increased risk of breast cancer, right? Like that is a huge thing that's not talked about, not just with like gender affirming care as a whole, and the increased risk it brings to, of course, our mental health and like the suicide risk, but of course, not having gender affirming care and someone to talk to when you might not have that strong relationship with your chest. And so I found that as my womanhood has shifted, I now view it as more like a personhood, simply because I know that as a non-binary person, I am far more comfortable being femme, but I'm not necessarily someone who represents the stereotypical woman, if you will. I have to be almost extra aware of my chest now and my chest health, and extra vigilant about doing those exams and having those conversations because it's not top of mind any longer. I don't love them or go to them or even show them the same way I used to. And even in here, in my little pride cup, I have lemon water because breastfeeding is so vital for my child, and so exhausting and so draining. Nobody ever talks about that. But even last year, you know, this pride cup might have had some joy juice, like you know, something else other than lemon water. So just making sure that we are always top of mind about what that change in our breast could look like and how very often that kind of guides our experience on a daily, but in on a macroscopic level too. Sorry, Isa.
So many great things have been said, and so much came up for me. And I know the word evolve, and Haley has said it a few times. It kept sticking out to me because I feel that pride to me has evolved into such a larger meaning of like accepting myself entirely and who I am now, but who I'm going to continue to become and change. And that includes my body. You know, we're going to age and things are going to start to look different. If we're going to have kids, that's going to, you know, so just accepting of that entirely and being proud of whoever that is in the future. And it definitely has evolved being now a breast health advocate. I think I've always been one, but obviously being in this space makes you an even stronger one. And you're going out into the community and you have to practice what you're preaching, you know. So um, that's one thing that came up for me. That's all I wanted to add.
Finding partners in your life that are down for that ride too, right?
Yeah.
Down for that evolving journey of your body changing as you age, as you take hormones, right? To make the changes that you want to see, or to, you know, because I feel like I've also learned about back to my menopause talk. I don't know why this isn't coming up, but like how a lot of people take testosterone, well, women take testosterone during menopause to counterbalance some things, right? And so hormones are taken for so many reasons, especially in the LGBTQIA community. And so, yeah, I feel like that's something that we can dive into a little bit more. And on that note, how do you begin to find trusted doctors, right, to have these conversations and to dive into these topics? Because I think it's super important to think about to go into to be able to have these conversations about what you need from your body, what your body's doing naturally, how you need to like level set some things, with people who are going to be judgment free, right? That's a big piece of it. And so for those of you who have found doctors that you feel like work for you, whether that be in for your physical health, your mental health, anything, how are you finding those people and how can we help other people find them as well?
I know for me, I had the same OBGYN since I was 16 all the way up until I was pregnant with my son. And it wasn't until I was pregnant with my son that I truly felt like I wasn't being heard. When it came to certain things, and I switched healthcare providers because I was like, you know what, you were good for this period in my life, but I'm in a new phase and I need someone who's actually going to listen to what I have to say. I'm not 16 no more. At this point, I was 28 years old, 29, so, I felt like the shift there for me was like, I have to advocate for myself because I know my body and being pregnant and all of these things. I know what I wanted. And it's really about, I think it's really about just knowing where you're at. For me in Philadelphia, it wasn't that hard. Once I realized that the place I was no longer for me, I immediately found a new provider who listened to me, listened to everything that I, had to say, and I felt safe to the point where during I'm from Jamaica, so during my pregnancy, I felt like I was in so much pain, but because they were like telling me it's round ligament pain and stuff like that, that I should look the other way. And I was like, absolutely not. This is not round ligament pain. And because I advocated to get further testing done, it was sure that I had a fibroid, which my son head was directly on. And during that pregnancy, I wasn't able to take any type of medication because of how far in my pregnancy I was. The only thing they could offer me was Tylenol, which wasn't doing the trick. And I said to my new primary care if I could have wheat tea. I told her I don't smoke, I don't, do those things, but I know from my culture that if I make this tea, it would help with the pain. And she was very understanding and said that it was okay for me to drink the tea while being pregnant. But when I gave birth to my son, they did my blood test and it tested positive for THC, to the point that they called social service on me because they were like, oh, you were smoking. And I was like, no, I don't smoke. And if it wasn't for my midwife to come in there and said, no, she doesn't smoke, she has a fibroid, all of these things are in her note, her culture, because of her culture, this is a form of medicine, and that really helped a lot. So when I found out I was pregnant again, because I moved, my care team doesn't provide service where I'm at. So I actually called and was like, I need the same care team that I now travel 30 minutes just to see the same midwife and care team for my son. So I think it just depends on where you at, and finding the right people who understand your culture, who understand your needs, your want, and people that listen to you. You don't have to like fight to be heard, or being told that, well, I'm the doctor, so you just need to listen to me, stuff like that.
So, Trudy, what you said really resonated with me in a lot of ways. Haley knows on a personal level from the moment I learned that I was pregnant, I was carrying a high risk pregnancy. Unfortunately, I had endometriosis, so very similar to your experience. The level of scar tissue made my uterus a hostile environment. I was told of the possible risk for a spontaneous kind of rupture or abortion and just all of these things that were really scary to me, right? And I was at the time approaching my 30th birthday. And one of the things that had guided my 20s was research. I had gotten a degree in public policy, my master's from Temple. And during my time there, I had done a research project that really helped me identify kind of where to find the right care. And one of those things is that, like, to anyone watching, if you are in DC, Whitman Walker, great place to get gender affirming queer care. If you are in Philly, the Mazzoni Center, amazing place to get great gender affirming queer care. If you're here in New York, Callan Lorb, one of the oldest queer comprehensive health centers, right? Like, there are places all up and down the East Coast that have specialized in queer affirming care. And it was so important for me to find my primary cares, my mental health care providers through those places. And then kind of I was at this cliff with pregnancy, which is like, well, now where do I go? So many of those places don't have OBGYNs on staff. Like, now what do I do? And I learned like ULA, which shout out to ULA and my amazing care team. They are an extremely inclusive, gender affirming, comprehensive center. So I had my OBGYN, my midwife, and my doula all in the same building on the same team. I had them communicating. Here in New York, they do not test for THC when giving birth in hospitals. And one of the first things they said to do for endometriosis and scar tissue was actually to have gummies and to regularly check in with them about not just the way that I was feeling, for the level of pain that I was experiencing, but also the level of anxiety. And that was hard because I come from a Trinidadian family, come from a Catholic family. Haley will tell you, you know, cannabis use and pregnancy are not words that go in the same sentence around those group of people, especially not one when like my mom is a phenomenal administrative healthcare provider. And so there's a lot of traditional beliefs that were hard to fight and hard to combat. And I had to do what was best for not just me, but for my child, and for producing a healthy outcome in this pregnancy. And I had to rely on a team of people with whom I knew that they would understand my identity, but I was hoping they would understand my culture. And sometimes those are incongruent, right? Sometimes we feel like you have to choose one over the other. And my strongest recommendation is that when you're seeking a provider, you don't settle. You don't try and go for one over the other. You don't try to choose, you know, someone based off the skin tone, because not all skin folk are kin folk. You try to go with someone who genuinely understands your needs, whether that be on a psychological or physiological level, and someone who is at the forefront of their fields, right? So choose the place that offers comprehensive gender affirming and sexual orientation care. Choose a place that has culturally aligned values where you don't have to explain what it's like to be Jamaican or Trini or Bajan. Choose something that to me represents your holistic identity and not just a facet of it. And that's kind of like the most important thing in my opinion. And when you can't find that at some place, ask for a referral. Everybody went to med school with somebody. So there is tons of times where a doctor might not be well suited for one thing, but they have a friend, a colleague, a professor who is better suited for it. So don't be shy. Ask them to ask a friend. It's my number one thing in this field, which is like, can you please recommend somebody if you are in my position? And I'll leave it there for a second.
No, we're so multidimensional, right? As people, as and so there are so many different things that make us who we are, right? Whether that be our gender, our sexuality, our culture, our upbringing as its own strange thing, you know? I mean, my therapist does not look like me, but at the time of meeting her, she had also just moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so much of the things that I needed from her were about that transition in my life. And so yet, like, we're not similar at all. Like that one thing truly bonded us and therefore gave me a safe space to have a lot of the conversations I needed to have with her, right? And now I'll go nowhere else. But like that was, you know, again, these moments, it could be just a phase of life that you're in too, that could lead to needing a certain kind of help or support. And yeah, and so Uza, I actually have a question for you because I obviously know everybody personally on these calls. And so I'm just like, I know that you were in love with your therapist and recently you've maybe had to switch. And so like how is that working? Because and we'll talk about how great it was to have someone that you know you bonded with. But yeah, anything in that realm would be great to share.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of, Haley. That last year we were having this conversation and I was so excited about my therapist. I mean, I did a lot of research. You're shopping, right? So I think I probably started with Psychology Today, then I made sure it aligned with my insurance, but um I'm sure somewhere there was a Google search where I literally like queer, black, and that's she was everything. She's going back to do more schooling, but um, she was literally queer, black, very Afrocentric, spiritual, and like I'm not very religious, but we were just so aligned in so many ways. So it's definitely been hard to break away and like kind of start that search all over again, but I'm on the hunt. And I think for me, it usually starts with a Google search. What is in my area? And then kind of narrow it down from there. But super important to me for um, my mental health provider to just, we need to be really locked in. And I think having someone that understands the journey of being a queer person, a queer Black person in this world, just really shapes the entire relationship and what that treatment looks like. Um, but I'm on the hunt.
I'm
I have
glad
some
that you
contenders.
I'm glad that you said spiritual too, because I know a lot of patients, breast cancer patients who it's really, really important to have doctors that are willing to
Yeah.
pray with them before surgery, right? Are
Yeah.
willing to match that piece of their identity. And so that's really, really important too. Dr. Candace, I've actually feel like I've never asked you about the doctors that you seek or the doctors that like are in your life, you know what I mean? Because I'm so obsessed with you being a doctor yourself that I'm like, what do you do to find your doctors?
I do pretty much the same thing that was listed, Google searches, look up their credentials. I mostly look for people of color, honestly, because I feel like I get the best care whenever I do have someone of color. Um, and I recently did get a new primary care doctor who's a Black female and a new OBGYN who's a Black female. And I have specialty doctors who are not Black females, but they are females and they are minorities. And I feel like I'm listened to a little bit more and explained things better, even though I am a surgeon. Sometimes I need for someone to explain to me like which trial they're talking about or what references or why they're doing something. And I've had experiences with other doctors who have not done that, and they've coincidentally not been minority females. So, yeah.
Yeah, all in all, don't stop to find find doctors that match your needs, even if it takes a second. I understand that taking a second might often cost money, which I want to address. So I want to acknowledge that as a part of the equation sometimes, and that's not fair. It's another thing where I have to tell Black women to do more, which I hate having to do sometimes, but like that is sometimes our reality. But advocating for yourself is worth it. And and know what your rights are, know what you have access to, because sometimes these things don't cost and we think they do, right? And so like also know what you have access to insurance wise, and at your job and how to like have those conversations. Just know to advocate for your needs because again, there are so many things that make up who we are, and our entire identity. And so just like never stop at answers that you don't like, like continue to find them. But yeah, any other thoughts there before I ask another question?
Oh, I did want to give a shout out to Whitman Walker. I love that you shouted them out. They're amazing if you're in DC. They have like, it's not new anymore, but it used to be on 14th Street. They have like a beautiful office. So definitely go there if you're in the area.
Yeah. No, thank you for those because like I think a lot of people hopefully watch the show are in those areas and can use those resources on the East Coast. So my next thought is this. I feel like a lot of people relate their breast cancer to stress, right? And we know that the LGBTQIA community is under a lot more stress or a lot of stress, right? And so there's a quote here that or a stat here that I have: the LGBTQ plus patients report significantly higher levels of distress, over 40% experiencing high or very high distress, compared to the non-LGBTQIA community. And so, what does that mean to you? What is that? What can we do about this? Like, what are we like? What are we doing to combat the levels of these levels of stressors in our lives, especially as LGBTQIA community? And how can we support others in this to like understand that like that we should be alarmed about what these things could do to our bodies.
I think I'm seeing us as a collective, like kind of reaching back to our roots and our like more holistic methods to help us cope with our stress. I see a lot of people becoming yoga instructors and doing meditation groups and retreats and hiking, being out in nature. Um, that's what I'm seeing, and I'm getting involved anytime that I can.
I love that you referenced the holistic aspect of some of the ways to like de-stress and recenter ourselves, Isa. I also, as you know, I'm a fan of transparency, so happy to share with the whole internet and anyone who asks me about what this last year and a half has brought financially, which is a level of change and discomfort that I have never experienced. Becoming a parent drains us in ways that I just had not realized. And more importantly, let's drop some stats that are important to the queer community, right? Like, we know that being queer brings higher rates of precarious work conditions and unemployment. We know that people who are queer are more likely to work in service industries. So we're talking food, we're talking hospitality, we're talking occupations that don't traditionally offer health insurance. And what does that out of pocket cost look like? It looks like sometimes a lot of sacrifices between groceries and your copay. It looks like a lot of awkward choices and awkward conversations about payment plans for your own well being. It looks like not always being able to make the appointment when you need it, but when you can. And that in itself is stressful to experience and also worse on your overall physiological stance, right? Like, nobody wants to have to choose between how to pay for their care and whether or not they receive it. And I think it's a very honest kind of calling moment to be like, it's not just that we're experiencing stress, but it's that the stress is taking a more severe toll on our bodies and our psychological well-being. And having been someone who was always an A-type person, always had a cute job and a cute outfit to go with it, not working for this last year and a half has been a very uncomfortable moment for me. Having to navigate a whole new health insurance system has been a very uncomfortable moment for me. It's also been really humbling because I'm able to realize that while I'm blessed to be home with my child, I really miss the blessing of a paycheck. And so I think that when we are speaking of stress with one another, it's important to remember how that stress can take hold in various forms. It can be financial stress, it can be physical stress, it can be stress with our partners because queer women do have higher rates of prevalence in domestic violence than their straight counterparts in some states. And I just think that we have to figure out ways beyond um, yoga and hiking to also have those conversations. Like, sometimes the most destigmatizing way to approach our stress isn't um, just therapy, but also having a support system, having people to draw on, having a community, and figuring out access and resources beyond the traditional routes that most people go to. Because sometimes the copay is too high. So, and that's just like my way of, I guess, interpreting what the word stress can mean, because there's so many different aspects of stress, especially when it comes to transitions in life, to parenthood, to 30s, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to add to that, community is so important. And I I can't speak for other states because I don't really know, but in Philadelphia, I feel like we have such a very diverse net worth and community here. My other organization is called It Takes a Village, and through It Takes a Village Foundation, I let people know, especially immigrants, especially queer immigrants, don't be afraid to go to the health center. The health center can be your best asset. And I know a lot of times people will look at it like only poor people go to the health center, but there are so many amazing researchers here at the health center. And there are so many different health centers. I think there's like 10 different health centers here in Philadelphia, and they have good amount of resources, from helping you with your copay to financial assistance to mental health services, like getting testing done. You can find those information at your health center. In addition to, there's so many different food groups and food banks here, and community fridge here that, you know, if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you can reach out to a lot of these grassroots movements that, you know, boots on the ground people who are, you know, legit just the community coming together to put in these resources together. So I think if you're in Philadelphia, if you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community and you're looking for resources, yeah, start with your health center because they'll definitely refer you to, you know, where you need to go. And there's a lot of different LGBTQ plus organization here in Philadelphia too. You know, especially organization gearing towards like the youths and healthcare in general. So don't be afraid. Don't think only poor people go to the health center. Anybody can go to the health center. It's there for a reason, and they're there to help you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you for bringing that up, Trudian. Um, Within the LGBTQ plus community, um, studies have shown that there are lower rates of screening mammograms, as low as like 60% of having screening mammograms within 2 years in some areas. And then, so that can lead to delays in diagnoses. And then also, when diagnosed with breast cancer, unfortunately, higher risk of recurrence compared to cisgendered people. So, it's really important to be your own advocate and um, take advantage of the programs that are available to you if you don't have access to like seeing a regular doctor, just so that you can at the very least get your routine screening that you need. And then as far as the stress goes, I think it's really important to find the best ways for you to manage stress because studies also show that like stress can lead to stress within your cells, which can lead to increased chances of getting cancers. So it is really important to, I know life is difficult and the US doesn't make it that easy for anyone who's different, but it's important to try to manage your stress however you can to help decrease your risk of these medical issues as well.
No, I will also want to plug I think it's heard of Zammy No Blood. They were actually on The Doctors In with my mom on Wednesday for her Pride show. But it's an organization focusing on Black lesbians on aging. So everything that comes up, right? They're out of Atlanta. And so I'll put that in the chat for everyone on Black Doctor. But yeah, really fun resources about to like all things that come up as you age as you know a queer person and how to really dive in, and they have amazing resources. I feel like, you know, if you are in the Philly area, like hit up Trudy. She literally like the work that she does with the Takes a Village and Bird Cancer Foundation is like connecting people to resources, you know. And then if you are in New York, like hit up Jayla. Like there are so many ways to utilize us here that like do know these resources because sometimes they are hard to find, right? And it is another step to go and do the research of looking for these things, right? And looking for these resources. And so, you know, if we can make that any easier, please feel free to rely on us to do that. So yes, thank you guys for amazing resources and
Bump,
wait,
I want to flag one more thing because we have
please.
not mentioned it this whole call. I think it's super important. But Planned Parenthood centers. You
Yeah.
know, oftentimes we forget that Planned Parenthood centers are available for, especially those who are struggling in their low-income communities. They are available for free or no cost at all for your mammograms, right? For your screenings, for a lot of the preventative care and resources that we need for early detection work. So Planned Parenthood is not just for birth control. It is not just for those who are pregnant or seeking to get pregnant. It's very important to remember that all persons can access Planned Parenthood centers. And wherever you are, please Google your nearest one. Please support them, whether that be through going or through donation. And remember that you can start there as well. Aside from your LGBTQIA plus centers, Planned Parenthood centers exist as gender inclusive queer beacons of hope as well. So just wanted to plug and throw that out there. Thank you, Trudy, for reminding me of health centers. Because yes, Planned Parenthood is the GOAT. That's
right? Like truly the goat. And I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't like to comment on the times we live in, right? And we really do need to continue to acknowledge that people are out here still doing this work, you know? And so, like, don't feel like because of the times we live in that these things no longer exist. They are no longer as robust as they always have been. These resources are very much there. These times we live in are make us feel like we're all under attack, and we are to some degree, and for all the things again that make up our identities. You know, there are many reasons why we should feel that way and do feel that way. And so just a good plug to remember that like that's not stopping the boots on the ground. That's not stopping the people who are doing this work every day and are, you know, going to work at their health centers every day. And people like me who drop off flyers at health centers all the time. Do you know what I mean? I might not hit everyone, you know, but I like we are out here doing that. And so, on that note, I'm wondering, and this is like kind of more inquiry for myself, like, how can we make sure that, like, basically, I'm saying that it's hard to get people to, like, it's hard to do the research to get the resources we need, right? How can we make this process a little bit easier for the LGBTIA community? You know, like, how can we make sure that that we are reaching everyone to the best of our abilities, but also like what's the best way to get Black breast health information to this community? Any ideas here?
Um, I know here in Philadelphia with me and Nia is very much boots on the ground. You know, you have to go meet people where they're at. You know, I think one of the big thing is, especially what we've seen in our community, is that nobody talk about breast health. Like it's not a thing. Like, you know, I didn't even know there was a separate doctors just for your breasts, like outside of your GYN. Like I didn't know that, you know. But you know, it really starts with education. And one of the things that I've been advocating for is how, you know, when it comes to sex ed, we've always taught kids that don't have sex or just have safe sex, but we're not talking about breasts and how your breast changes and how to do a routine breast exam. I don't think I ever had a breast exam until I was in my 20s, you know. Like, yeah, I was going to my GYN to get my pap and, you know, but yeah, it was never, well, this is how you should check your breast, what you're checking for. And I don't think that needs to be more within our community, especially the Black community, you know, breast health. And it starts at home, but then sometimes, of course, mom also doesn't know. So how do we educate a whole group of people who knows nothing about their body in general? You know, because now we have the younger generation who are getting the information, you know, and then they're taking it back home and they're trying to teach their parents about it. But then sometimes, depending on the type of household you grew up in, like I said, I'm from Jamaica, and sex is not something we talked about in my household with my mom. Like, it just doesn't come up. You don't talk about your breasts. Actually, you don't even touch yourself. Touching your body. I come from a very Christian household, was very much forbidden. Okay. I couldn't go to my mom and say, "Hey, mom, there's stuff coming out of my breasts," or, you know, I find something weird about my breasts or whatever. So I definitely think, you know, getting more education out there to our community, and it can't just be online. It can't just be, you know, you have to be in their face, whether it's going to the hair salon and sitting there and talking to women, or, you know, going to the churches and talking to more people, or just setting up different community forum. I find that it's so much easier to connect and talk to people and educate people when you're one on one with them. I like to set up one on one within my own home. You know, I invite people in and we sit down and we have conversation, you know, and I find that's one of the best ways that works for us, for me. And yeah, you know, I feel like if we have more of a community, I feel like a lot of things is just so disconnected because we have the internet now. You know, we can just go live, or we can just, you know, share the videos online and put up the pamphlets and do all of this stuff, but are people really learning? You know, it reminds me of when I was pregnant the first time with my son, and they asked me if I wanted to breastfeed, and I told them yes. And I thought I was going to actually get information on breastfeed, and they just handed me a pamphlet and said, "Okay, here you go." And I was like, "What the hell is this?" You know, but it wasn't until I had a actually, like, I knew about breastfeeding, I knew that I wanted to do it, but actually talking to my doula and what is breastfeeding? What is the process of breastfeeding? How much does breastfeeding takes out of you? You know, all of those things. You know, I feel like we need more intimate conversation in places and spaces.
I love everything that you just said, and that's everything that I've been doing for the past few years here in the Bay Area, like trying to meet people where they are, trying to get our community come out, learn about breast health, learn about how to do self-breast exams, doing these at community centers, church events, um, a whole host of different events, health centers, and like really getting this embedded into our educational system is also key. It's also like been one of the goals of mine because like you said, like we talk about safe sex. No one talks about like things that can like really save people's lives as well, which is doing self-breast exams. So I love everything that you said.
And I think what's most important about what you both have said is the honesty and the level of evolution that you said it with. So knowing that like this wasn't a thing even a few years ago, we weren't all in the same place with some of these conversations because they were so heavily stigmatized. Sometimes the environment you grow up in can mean that you're quieter about the things that matter most, about your sexuality, about the way in which you take care of yourself. And I think there's a little bit of unlearning that comes with some of this. And for me, sharing breast health is life saving. So, in my opinion, one of the most important things that you can do is just, and excuse my language, but just say that shit. If your breast is changing and it's suddenly indented, if there's a different color on one side, if it's pinching, if it's leaking fluid, say that shit. Don't stigmatize it. Don't hold it in. Don't keep it a secret. Because more times than not, it's not just you who's being affected by those symptoms or those signs. There's a friend who's like, oh, you know what? I should probably go with you to a mammogram. For Haley's wedding, there was free breast screenings. And a lot of people found that oxymoronic, which is like, why would you have a wedding and free breast screenings? But it's not, right? Because why would you plan for your future and not know about your future health? Why would you not be here for your future? Why would we invite people whom we love and care about, but then not want to know what's happening in their real life and as their full personhood? So to me, it goes hand in hand of like, say it loudly and say it proudly when things are changing, when things seem off. Invite your friends into the conversation. Make sure you're leaning on them and saying, come with me to this appointment. There's a slot after me. Maybe you should get a mammogram too. And that really kind of changes the way that it is approached because people feel less alone, but be less reluctant to keep it to themselves, to keep those resources in that moment to themselves. And I just find that to be one of the most important parts of kind of unlearning or growing up, right? Is knowing that like transparency really can save lives. And that this work isn't about shaming or hiding or stigmatizing some of the things that we traditionally thought were like in the bedroom conversations or behind closed doors conversations, but bringing forward and bringing light to areas that often, have been hidden away and need to be spoken about more openly and more regularly. So I really appreciate what you both said about it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is also a great plug for Know Your Lemons. It's a great app that can remind you like when to do your breast exams, what to look for. So I implore anyone watching to just like look it up online or on the what is it, the App Store and download it so that you can remember to do your self breast exams.
Touch is actually partnering with them to make a Black version of the app. And so that's in progress. And so, because we acknowledge that, like, It's, you know, we will have limes instead of lemons, right? We will have different things that are more culturally sensitive, to make sure that we are reaching the Black community with that. But that's a great resource also because they are lemons, right? It is a great way to talk about breasts without the sexual context, right? And it's a great way to talk to anyone who has breast tissue, right, about the breast, because it is so inclusive because it's lemons. Everyone knows lemons, right? And so, and that just brings you back to like, let's remember that like this is an inclusive conversation. Everybody has breast tissue, right? You need to be checking the breasts that you love, regardless of your gender, sexuality, everything included, right? And so that's why this topic is so important to bring up during Pride. Um, I wanted to know that last week I was talking with somebody about, we have to go also, so we could do this for, you know, hours. But I was talking with somebody last week about how AI is allowing us to ask more questions without judgment and privacy. And so I want to challenge everybody to, like everyone said here, to stay curious and stay transparent in person, right? Make it visible because it's great to ask people things in private that you might not want to say out loud. But when you do say it out loud, it allows for other people, other neighbors, other friends to hear and say, oh, that applies to me too, right? It encourages more community. And so I want to encourage us in this very digital age to continue to challenge ourselves to stay curious about our bodies in public and making it visible. Because I think that can go a long way. And to just make our communities tighter and stronger and more knowledgeable as a whole, right? If we can do that. So, thank you guys. This is a great show. I really feel like there's so much more here. And I don't have a July show planned, so maybe I'll call you. But I feel like this has been a really, really great Pride moment. I hope that we all can leave here and remind somebody to do this. Anybody watching wants me to do this. If you need more information or want to hit us up, hit up Touch. I can connect you to any one of these amazing people here. Visit loveofmygirls.org, GURLS girls. And yeah, any other final thoughts before we close out?
Yes, I want to make sure that we honor both you and Trudy. Wishing you a safe birth, an extremely healthy and regenerative postpartum experience, Trudy. Congratulations. 9 months is a long time to be growing organs and gestating and remaining healthy yourself. So, want to make sure we honor that for you. And Dr. Candace, just also need to own for everybody watching the work that you do is so vital and so important. I really hope that whether it's in Paris or in San Francisco, that you take a moment to, you know, celebrate yourself and honor yourself and what a contribution to the community you have given us. So happy Pride, everyone, and thank you. This has been absolutely amazing.
Yes, this has been great. I definitely think we should do another show on motherhood because I have so much to say when it comes to my boobs because I am very much attached to them, okay? Very much attached to them. And I think if God forbid that I should ever have to snip, whew, I'm gonna need a whole lot of therapy because I love my girls a lot, you know. And I'm a breastfeeding mom of I breastfed my son for 2 years. And you know, like you said earlier, it's a lot. People don't tell you about the tired, it's legit a full-time job. Being a breastfeeding mom and you know, now being pregnant with my second, planning on breastfeeding again because she doesn't have a choice. Um, you know, I think we definitely need to have more conversations, especially within the motherhood, especially in Black communities, because I feel like now a lot of more Black moms are starting to breastfeed, and I think that's so wonderful and empowering for them as well.
Yeah, well, let's definitely do a motherhood show. I think that's imperative, and I think that we can all agree to that. But thank you guys. And Dr. Hans, did you have any last comments?
I already made mine. Make sure you're doing your self-breast exams each month and asking your friends if they're doing theirs.
Yes, yes. Thank you guys for our June Pride Pink Table Talk. Happy Pride. Go
Happy Pride.
celebrate, and we will see you guys next month. Bye.
Thanks. See you.